Have you ever dreamed of walking out to your backyard and picking clusters of sweet, sun-warmed grapes right off the vine? There really is nothing quite like it. The flavor of a fresh homegrown grape is worlds apart from anything you will find at the grocery store. Today, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to grow your own grapes from start to finish. From choosing the right varieties for your climate all the way through harvesting baskets full of fruit. And stick around to the end, because I am going to share my favorite way to turn those fresh grapes into something you can enjoy all year long. Let us get into it. Grapes are one of the most rewarding fruits you can grow in your home garden. They are beautiful on the vine, incredibly productive once established, and the truth is they are a lot easier to grow than most people think. Once you understand a few key concepts and pick the right varieties for your area, you will be harvesting your own grapes in just a few years. So let us start by understanding the different types of grapes and which ones might be right for you. When it comes to growing grapes, there are four main types you should know about: American grapes, European grapes, hybrids of the two, and muscadine grapes. Each one has its own strengths and ideal growing conditions, so understanding these differences is going to help you make the best choice for your particular situation. American grapes are native to North America, and they are some of the easiest grapes to grow for home gardeners. Concord is probably the most famous American grape, and for good reason. These grapes have what they call slip skins, meaning the flesh slips right out of the skin when you bite into them. American grapes are fantastic for fresh eating, making juice, jellies, and even wine. The big advantage here is that American grapes are more cold-hardy than European varieties, and they tend to be much more resistant to common grape diseases. If you live anywhere from zones 4 through 8, American grapes are probably going to be your best bet for easy success. European grapes are the ones you typically see in grocery stores. Your Thompson seedless, your flame grapes, those beautiful table grapes and most wine grapes fall into this category. Now, European grapes can produce absolutely stunning fruit, but here is the catch. They are more susceptible to fungal diseases, they need a longer growing season, and they are less cold hardy. If you live in a warm, dry climate like parts of California or the Southwest, European grapes can do wonderfully. But for those of us in more humid regions, they can be a real challenge. That brings us to hybrid grapes, which are crosses between American and European varieties. These hybrids give you the best of both worlds. You get improved disease resistance and cold hardiness from the American parent, combined with some of the flavor qualities of European grapes. Varieties like Marquis and Neptune fall into this category, and they can be excellent choices for gardeners who want something a little different. Finally, if you live in a really warm climate like South Florida or the Gulf Coast, muscadine grapes might be your only option, and honestly, they are a great one. Muscadines are native to the southeastern United States, and they thrive in heat and humidity that would destroy other grape types. They need the fewest chill hours of any grape, which makes them perfect for zones 7 through 10 in the deep south. Now that you understand the different types, let us talk about how to choose the specific varieties that will work best in your garden. This is honestly the most important decision you will make when it comes to growing grapes successfully. The right variety selection can mean the difference between struggling for years with disappointing harvests and having more grapes than you know what to do with. The first thing you need to consider is your USDA hardiness zone. American grapes and hybrids can handle zones 4 through 8 without much trouble. European grapes really prefer zones 7 through 10, and muscadines do best in zones 7 through 10 in humid southern climates. Knowing your zone is the starting point, but it is not the whole picture. You also need to think about disease pressure in your area. If you live somewhere humid like I do, fungal diseases like black rot, downy mildew, and powdery mildew are going to be constant threats. This is where variety selection becomes absolutely critical. Concord grapes, for example, have excellent resistance to black rot. The fruit becomes resistant to infection just a couple of weeks after bloom. Compare that to many European varieties that stay susceptible much longer into the season, and you can see why choosing disease-resistant varieties makes such a huge difference. My advice, if you are just starting out, is to stick with tried and true disease-resistant varieties. Concord and Niagara are fantastic American choices. For seedless options, look at Canadas or Reliance, which are both cold-hardy and reasonably disease-resistant. Once you have some success under your belt, then you can experiment with more challenging varieties. Also consider what you want to use your grapes for. If you want fresh eating, look for varieties described as having excellent table quality. If you dream of making your own grape juice or jelly, Concord is hard to beat. For wine, you will want to research varieties suited to your specific climate and the style of wine you want to make. With your varieties selected, the next step is choosing where to plant them and getting that spot ready. Grapes have some specific requirements when it comes to their growing site, and taking the time to get this right will pay off for decades to come. First and foremost, grapes need full sun. We are talking at least 8 hours of direct sunlight per day. More is better. Sun exposure is critical, not just for fruit production, but also for keeping the vines dry and reducing disease pressure. A south-facing location is ideal in most of the country. Air circulation matters too. You want a spot where air can move freely around the vines. Avoid low spots where cold air settles and humidity lingers. Planting on a gentle slope is perfect because it lets cold air drain away and keeps air moving through the canopy. Now let us talk about soil. Grapes are actually pretty adaptable, but they do have preferences. They like well-drained soil with a pH between 5 and 6.5. Heavy clay that stays waterlogged will cause problems, so if that describes your soil, consider planting on a raised mound or adding plenty of organic matter to improve drainage. I recommend getting a soil test before you plant. Your local extension office can do this for you inexpensively. If your pH is too high, you can lower it with sulfur over time. If it is too low, you can add lime. The key is to know what you are working with so you can make adjustments. One of the smartest things you can do is prepare your planting site a full season before you actually plant your grapes. If you know you want to plant grapes next spring, start preparing the ground this fall. Add compost or aged manure to build up organic matter, remove any weeds or grass, and let everything settle over the winter. Your grapes will thank you for it. When it comes time to actually plant your grapes, timing matters. The best time to plant is in early spring, just as the soil becomes workable, but before the buds on your grapevines start to swell. For most areas, this means sometime between late March and early May, depending on your location. I strongly recommend ordering 1-year-old dormant bare root grapevines from a reputable nursery. Bare root plants establish quickly and are much more affordable than potted plants. When your vines arrive, the first thing you want to do is soak the roots in water for about 1 to 2 hours. Those roots have been out of the ground during shipping, possibly for several days, and they need to rehydrate before planting. Dig your planting hole about 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide, large enough to spread the roots out comfortably. If you are planting multiple vines, space American and hybrid grapes about 8 feet apart. European grapes can go a bit closer at 6 to 8 feet. Muscadines need more room, about 20 feet between plants. Set the vine in the hole so the graft union, if there is one, sits about 2 inches above the soil line. Spread the roots out evenly and backfill with your native soil mixed with a bit of compost. Firm the soil gently as you go to eliminate air pockets, then water deeply. Now here is the part that feels a little crazy, but is absolutely essential. Once you have your new grape planted and the buds start to swell, you need to prune it back hard. Cut everything off except for the 2 strongest buds. I know it feels wrong to chop back a vine. You just planted, but trust me on this. That first year, your grape needs to focus all its energy on building a strong root system, not on growing a bunch of leafy top growth. A grapevine with a robust root system will be more productive and healthier for years to come than one that was allowed to run wild from the start. By the way, if you are finding this helpful so far, take a second to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss future videos. All right, let us keep going. Once your grapes are in the ground, you need to think about how you are going to support and train them. Grapes are vines, and they need something to grow on. A proper trellis or support system is not optional. It is essential for healthy vines and good fruit production. There are several ways to trellis grapes, but for home gardeners, I recommend keeping it simple. A basic 2-wire trellis works beautifully for most situations. To build one, set sturdy posts about 15 to 20 feet apart. These can be wooden 4x4s, metal T-posts, or even sturdy fence posts. The post should be set at least 2 feet deep for stability. String your first wire at about 3 feet off the ground. This is your main support wire, where the trunk of your grape will eventually be trained. Add a second wire at about 5 to 6 feet. This upper wire is where your fruiting canes will be trained along. You can also grow grapes on an existing fence, an arbor, or a pergola. Just keep in mind that wherever you grow them, you need to be able to access the vines for pruning and harvesting. Growing grapes overhead on a pergola looks beautiful, and there is something magical about reaching up to grab ripe clusters. But it can make maintenance trickier. During that first growing season, your job is to train one strong shoot straight up toward your first wire. This will become the permanent trunk of your vine. Remove any other shoots that try to grow, so all the energy goes into that one main leader. You can tie it loosely to a stake or string to keep it growing straight. Now let us talk about pruning, which I know makes a lot of people nervous. Here is the thing though. Grapes are incredibly forgiving when it comes to pruning. Even if you make mistakes, the vine will usually bounce back just fine. So do not let fear of pruning keep you from growing grapes. The reason pruning matters so much is that grapes only produce fruit on 1-year-old wood. That means the canes that grew last summer will produce this year's grapes. Old wood does not fruit. So every year you need to manage the vine to encourage new growth while keeping the plant in bounds and productive. There are 2 main pruning methods for grapes, cane pruning and spur pruning. Which one you use depends on your grape variety. Some varieties are more fruitful at the base of their canes and do well with spur pruning. Others produce better from buds further out on the cane and need cane pruning. When you order your vines, the nursery, information should tell you which method is recommended for each variety. Here is the reassuring news. You do not really need to worry about serious pruning until the second winter after planting. That first year, you are just focused on getting that single strong trunk established. The second winter is when you will start shaping the permanent structure of your vine. For most home gardeners using a simple trellis, cane pruning is straightforward and effective. In late winter, while the vine is still dormant, typically February or March in most areas, you will select 2 to 4 of the strongest, healthiest canes that grew last season. These should be about pencil thickness and have nice plump buds. Train these canes along your trellis wires, one going each direction, and cut them back to about 8 to 12 buds each. Everything else gets pruned off. It sounds drastic, but remember, those selected canes are going to push out vigorous new growth in spring. And that new growth is what will carry your fruit. Summer pruning is important too, though less severe. During the growing season, you want to keep the canopy open so sunlight can reach the fruit and air can circulate freely. Remove any shoots growing straight up or straight down that are not needed. Pinch off suckers that sprout from the base of the trunk. If the canopy gets too dense, thin out some of the leaves around the fruit clusters to improve airflow. This summer, maintenance goes a long way toward preventing fungal problems. With your grapes planted, trellised, and pruned, ongoing care is pretty straightforward. Grapes are not heavy feeders, and they do not need constant attention. But there are a few things that will keep them happy and productive year after year. Watering is most critical during the first 2 years while your vines are getting established. Young grapes need about 1 inch of water per week. If you are not getting that from rainfall, you will need to supplement with irrigation. A soaker, hose or drip irrigation works great because it keeps the foliage dry, which helps prevent disease. Once your vines are established, they are actually quite drought tolerant. Mature grapes have deep root systems that can find water on their own. In fact, too much water can be a problem, leading to excessive leafy growth and diluted fruit flavor. When it comes to fertilizing, less is more with grapes. Too much nitrogen will give you big, beautiful vines with very little fruit. I apply a balanced fertilizer or a layer of compost around my vines in early spring, just as the buds are starting to swell. And that is usually all they need. If your vines are growing vigorously and producing well, you may not need to fertilize at all. Let the plant tell you what it needs. Mulching around your grapevines helps retain moisture and suppress weeds. I use about 3 to 4 inches of wood chips or straw, keeping it a few inches away from the trunk to prevent moisture buildup against the bark. This also adds organic matter to the soil as it breaks down over time. One thing I highly recommend is covering your developing grape clusters with insect netting once the fruit starts to color up. This simple step makes a huge difference in protecting your harvest from birds, bees, wasps, and other critters that want to enjoy your grapes as much as you do. You can find insect netting at most garden centers. Just drape it over the clusters and secure it loosely. It lets light and air through while keeping the pests out. Now let us talk about some common problems you might run into and how to deal with them. Even with the best variety selection and care, issues can pop up, and knowing how to handle them will save your harvest. Black rot is probably the most common grape disease in humid climates. You will notice small brown spots on the leaves first, and then the fruit will develop tan spots that eventually turn the whole grape into a shriveled black mummy. The fungus overwinters in those mummified fruits, so sanitation is key. Remove any infected fruit and fallen debris from around your vines. For prevention, make sure your vines have good air circulation and consider using a copper-based fungicide early in the season if black rot has been a problem in your garden. Choosing resistant varieties like Concord is honestly the best defense. Powdery mildew shows up as a white powdery coating on leaves and fruit. It tends to be worse when days are warm and nights are cool, with high humidity. Good air circulation helps tremendously. If you catch it early, you can treat it with neem oil or a sulfur-based fungicide. Severely affected leaves should be removed and disposed of away from your garden. Downy mildew is another fungal issue that causes yellow spots on the tops of leaves and a fuzzy grayish growth underneath. It spreads quickly in wet conditions. Again, air circulation and keeping the canopy open are your best preventive measures. Copper fungicides can help if applied, before infection takes hold. Japanese beetles can be a real nuisance on grapevines, skeletonizing the leaves seemingly overnight. Hand-picking them into a bucket of soapy water works well if you only have a few vines. For larger plantings, you might need to use row covers or an organic insecticide like spinosad. Birds and wasps are going to be your biggest competitors for ripe grapes. That insect netting I mentioned earlier is really the best solution. Some gardeners also have success with reflective tape or fake owls, but in my experience, netting is the only thing that reliably works. If you see leaves that are cupped or curled with bumpy growths on them, you are probably dealing with grape phylloxera or leaf galls. These are caused by tiny insects, and while they look alarming, they rarely cause serious damage to established vines. You can simply remove the affected leaves if it bothers you. The good news is that if you have chosen disease-resistant varieties suited to your climate, and you practice good sanitation and pruning, you should be able to avoid most of these problems. Prevention really is the best medicine when it comes to growing grapes. Now for the moment you have been waiting for, harvesting your grapes. After all that work, this is where it all pays off. Depending on the variety, your grapes will be ready to harvest anywhere from late August through October in most parts of the country. Here is something important to know. Grapes do not continue to ripen after you pick them. Unlike tomatoes or bananas, Once a grape comes off the vine, that is as sweet as it is going to get. So you want to make sure they are fully ripe before harvesting. Color is not always a reliable indicator of ripeness. Many grapes, including Concord, will change to their final color a week or two before they are actually ready to eat. The best way to know is to taste them. When grapes are ripe, they will be sweet and flavorful with no tartness or green taste. The seeds, if present, will have turned from green to brown. The grapes should come off the stem easily. Another clue is aroma. Ripe grapes, especially varieties like Concord, will have a strong, sweet fragrance. When I walk into my garden in late summer, I can smell my Concord grapes from 20 feet away. That incredible grape aroma is a sure sign they are ready. Harvest in the morning after the dew has dried for the best quality. Use sharp pruners or scissors to cut entire clusters from the vine rather than pulling individual grapes. Handle them gently to avoid bruising. Fresh grapes will keep in the refrigerator for 1 to 2 weeks, but honestly, they taste so good, you will probably eat them long before then. Now here is that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. Once you start getting good harvests, you are going to have more grapes than you can possibly eat fresh. My favorite way to preserve that incredible homegrown flavor is to make grape juice, and it is so much easier than you might think. Here's how I do it. Take your fresh grapes, stems removed, and add them to a large pot. For every 4 cups of grapes, add about 1 cup of water. Bring it to a simmer and cook for about 10 to 15 minutes, mashing the grapes as they soften. Then strain everything through a cheesecloth or fine mesh strainer into another container. Do not press too hard or you will get cloudy juice. Add sugar to taste, usually about half a cup per quart of juice depending on how sweet your grapes are. Heat the sweetened juice just until the sugar dissolves, then pour it into sterilized jars or bottles. You can refrigerate it for a few weeks or process it in a water bath canner for long-term storage. The flavor is absolutely incredible. Nothing like store-bought juice. Once you taste homemade Concord grape juice, you will never go back. So that is everything you need to know to grow delicious grapes right in your own backyard. From choosing the right varieties for your climate, to planting, pruning, and finally harvesting baskets full of sweet fruit, you now have all the knowledge you need to get started. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you do not miss future videos. And if you have any questions or want to share your own grape growing experiences, drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.